Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight, and welcome creepers. I am Peeper, and that is Timper.
Those are puns worthy of the Crypt Keeper himself.
Yes. I'm Peter, that's Tim. We talk about horror movies. This is a horror movie podcast. We get together, we've watched a movie, we talk about it. It's really quite that simple. And
the Justice League of horror movie podcasts.
Was that joke based on the fact that the song for the Zack Snyder Justice League movie was a song called We'll Come Together or something to that effect?
Yes, I believe I think it's a cover of a very famous Beatles song. Or wait, is it Beatles? I don't know. But I was going to make fun of you for not really knowing it, but I guess I don't really know it either.
Clearly. So, yes, welcome to the show. Screams After Midnight. Horror movies is the game, and podcasting is the platform. And so anyway, we obviously we're making bad puns. We're referencing Crypt Keeper-esque sentiments, and that is because we're here to do a Tales from the Crypt related thingamabob. So if you actually followed this a while ago, this has actually been, it's been like a couple of years now since we finished this, but for about 3 years, give or take, we worked our way through the entire series of Tales from the Crypt on Mailfuzz TV. So if you listen to the audio version, you want to go hear us review every episode of that, you can find it on Mailfuzz TV. There's a big playlist of all 7 seasons of us reviewing it episode by episode, and it was the best of times, and it was a lot of the worst of times in places, honestly. There's more bad episodes than good, but obviously there's a lot of good episodes there that are worth remembering. But, you know, we did the original 70s movie before we started that. We finished the show, and the plan was always to eventually do the movies that came after at some point. We just kind of forgot about it for a while. So what better time than October season to finally get to the one that actually has, dare I say, some critical acclaim, and that is Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We will start spoiler free. We'll give you warning before we get into spoilers, but that is the gist of it. Obviously there's a premise of the story itself, but yeah, we do have some Crypt Keeper bookends, just like the show. The premise involves a man played by William Sadler being chased by another man played by Billy Zane. It's a pretty insane like who's who cast in this, to be honest. There's a lot of faces in this.
It's really great, and it's almost like all character actors, but they're all like so good. I feel like I forget a lot of just how many like great people are in this, but yeah, it's the stack is cast.
Yeah,
or the cast is stacked, as they say.
And there's a cat who's stacked in this movie too. I have to guess. I don't know what I'm saying. There's a cat. I'm just trying to say there's a cat.
There's a cat. Yeah.
That's all I'm really trying to say. So that is how the story starts, but it becomes a bit of a bottle movie. It's kind of a siege movie with demons and characters surviving in an old church that's been sort of retrofitted into like a hotel. So that is the premise of the film, which we'll get to more of the plot later on in spoilers. But I'll start off by saying I'd never seen this before. This was a first time watch for me. So it was neat coming into this and sort of finally seeing what all the fuss is about. No one ever tells me about Bordello of Blood. No one ever says you have to watch Bordello of Blood. Just Demon Knight.
Yeah, and then believe it or not, there's actually a somewhat of a third movie. There's a I actually haven't seen it, but I heard it's like terrible. It's Tim Curry is in it, which I mean, you know, he's always great, but I think it was supposedly supposed to be a third Tales from the Crypt movie, and then I'm not sure if they kept it, or I think they might have just like kind of scrapped it and just made it its own like standalone movie, but it was like I'm pretty sure it was like just straight to video or whatever, and it's not very good, so not many people talk about, but there's kind of a spiritual third movie. And did you watch the end credits of this one?
I did see the little mini post-credit thing at the very end, yes.
Because it is interesting. He also mentions another movie which actually didn't get made that was supposed to be the sequel, so that's kind of interesting too. But
yeah, I don't. It's funny, we're so used to these Marvel movies that promise a movie, then we actually get the movie. The idea that they would make a promise they couldn't keep with like, hey, come back for the next one. It's like, oh, the next one doesn't exist. So, yeah, well, we'll get into things. We'll talk about quality and all the usual things and the insane cast that are in this. I only mentioned two of the names, but there's a lot of faces in this to discuss. But you had seen this before. You have kind of recommended it before, so it's probably not a surprise to get the answer to this question. But Tim, how did you feel watching once again Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight?
Yeah, it's no surprise. I absolutely love this movie. I saw it when I was pretty young. I think I remember my brothers or something had rented it, and I think I sat in and watched it. I specifically remember that because there's the one scene where Thomas Hayden Church's character is like has these like electric prods on his nipples, and I just remember being like very confused by that, like because I was like, what is that, like what are they doing? And I remember asking, like bugging my brothers about it, and them just being like, we'll tell you when you're older, don't worry about it. And I still haven't really figured it out.
I was going to say, I don't think I completely understand exactly. Like, I guess it's just I understand it as a broad concept that people do this kind of thing. I wouldn't say I understand it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, no shame if that's the kind of thing you like. It's cool. It's just I never knew like what was going on since I was a kid, but I remember liking it as a kid, and then I feel like it's not one that I'd really thought about for most of my life until I feel like recently it had, I don't know if it had a resurgence in, like most like, cult horror, whatever, circles, but for me it's one that for some reason just kind of started popping up more and more, and like I think a couple of years ago, I hadn't seen it in a while, and then I got the like special edition Scream Factory Blu-ray, and I watched it, and I was just really like blown away by like, oh yeah, I remember liking this as a kid, but watching it now, like this is so much fun, especially in a decade like the 90s. I feel like are like there's a very specific horror that we think of in the 90s, which is like kind of like the Scream, and that like whole new wave of slashers that it set off, and then I feel like there's definitely like a lot of gems in the 90s, but it's not maybe one of the most prolific or beloved like decades for horror. But I think this is a prime example of like just a really, really spot on, terrific, horror movie. It's like you said, it's like a siege movie. It's like a bottle movie, which is always really fun. The cast is so good, which I think is like, one of the reasons why it's so rewatchable. And and again, I have a lot of fondness for the show, even though when we did rewatch it, there was a lot of bad episodes, but just having like those little Crypt Keeper bookends and like the theme music at the start and everything, I thought those parts were really funny, and it gets you like in a good mood for the movie. I do think if I have one complaint is, and it's like super, super minor, but like this doesn't really feel like a Tales from the Crypt episode. But I mean, I don't think that really like, bothers me too much, because it is so good. It's like, well, whatever. And also it's like a movie, so you can make the argument like, well, maybe they want to do something different for the movie or whatever. So I'm fine with that. But I mean, other than that, I just think it's super fun. Like, has like good, mostly like good like practical effects, and I think Billy Zane is like a really like fun villain. He does, he's like very cheesy and over the top, but he's one of the few people that can pull it off well. I always think that's really hard to do with horror. It's having like, the funny, goofy kind of villain. Like, Freddy pulls it off here and there, but not many other people like can really do it. And I think he's just so like, charming and fun to watch in this movie, that I really, really, really enjoy it. And again, it's just one that kind of keeps creeping up like in my like list of favorite horror movies the more I watch it. Like, this is just a really solid, fun movie. Doesn't get much better than this, as they say.
I was caught myself chuckling internally a little bit there, because halfway through that monologue, there was a moment where you said, it's a really good like horror movie, and I'm like, well, that's what we talk about, Tim. Yeah, that's what we're here for. Horror movies, yes. That's the subject to hand. So that was my first time watching this.
Am I like the only person that usually ends up like talking this much? Sometimes I listen to the other podcasts and just be like, so did you enjoy the movie? And they're like, yeah, I thought it was good. What do you think?
It's just varying degrees. So, like sometimes there's a happy medium that I'm looking for, and some people give me one word, and I'm like, elaborate, you fool, and then you sometimes go into a 5-minute monologue, and I'm like, we're going to get to a lot of this time. You don't have to necessarily blow your whole load in the first 30 seconds.
I like to get it out of the way so I can just sit back and then listen to you talk about whatever dumb aspect ratio you want to talk about.
The film's a 1.85 to 1, just in case you were wondering. But
that's not a lot.
What does that even mean? It's not a lot.
Like 1.85? Like they couldn't go to like 4, 5, 6? Come on.
Tim, you might think you want a 6 to 1 aspect ratio movie, but I promise you would not like it. The widest movie I believe I have ever seen, or that it might have even ever been made at a movie scale, is like 2.75 to 1. That's like your... I'm trying to think of an example. What's 2.75 to 1? There's definitely one or two big epics that are that shape. Like Ben-Hur, things like that.
Dragonheart.
Not Dragonheart. I don't think it's Dragonheart. Anyway, so as the first time I watched Stephen Knight, and I actually disagree with something you said there. I do think this feels like a Tales from the Crypt episode.
Interesting.
I think there's enough tone and kind of the absurdity and the silliness of the practical effects and the sense of humor that it does kind of feel like a Tales from the Crypt episode to me. But we can talk about the specifics of that once we
sure.
Get into spoilers and details. But no, I had a fun time. This is a fun,
nice,
solid movie. I did not know it was a bottle movie, which I always enjoy. I did not know about all the cast. I think what sticks out is the first thing we have to mention, and this popped out in my head within the first couple of minutes, is that William Sadler, who's an actor that I really, really like in a lot of things,
me too,
was the star of the first ever episode of Tales from the Crypt, which I don't think is an accident.
Oh.
I think they did this intentionally.
Was that the... Wait, is it the... Oh, wait, yeah, was it the, like, Executioner episode?
Yeah, it's on Death Row, yeah.
Oh, very good call.
Yeah, so... I thought, that's really neat. And I'm sure some of these other actors have probably popped up. I would be like, I don't remember specifically, but I love Dick Miller as well. He's in this. I would, you know,
so good. Yeah,
I would not be surprised if he's in an episode that I've forgotten about now. But
and for the record, so I mean, yeah, we'll get to Bordello of Blood. You know, at some point. So yeah, I don't want to spoil my thoughts on the actual movie, but I will say that Sadler does return in the like opening Crypt Keeper segments of that one, so it is at least worth it for that.
Okay. So, but Dick Miller's a really fun character actor who I've been a big fan of from Joe Dante movies. I obviously Billy Zane has got a very weird career. You know, the first thing I think most people really got to know him in was Titanic, but
Phantom?
But obviously he was in something like The Phantom, which was The Phantom was kind of like a movie channel like speciality where it was always playing on one of the movie channels, so you tend to catch it if you're in our age range. You probably caught it on cable back in the day. But yes, he was in that. He's actually also in the Twin Peaks TV show, the original TV show at one point. Which was that was a weird face when he popped up in that. But you got Billy Zane in there, who is excellent in the movie. Actually, I think he's actually very good in a role. It's maybe one of the best performances by Billy Zane I think I've seen. So
totally agree.
So we'll talk more about that in a bit. As far as the other, obviously Jada Pinkett Smith's in here. I think what's interesting about her is that I first saw her in Scream 2. And I remember thinking when I saw Scream 2 that, well, the whole thing with the start, and admittedly I wasn't thinking about it too deeply, I was still a kid, but the whole thing with Scream 1 was that you had that big shock of like, oh, Drew Barrymore's this like kind of well-known person in the opening scene and they're going to kill her off. I remember thinking like, okay, I know who Jada Pinkett Smith is a couple of years later because she's in the Matrix movies and she's married to Will Smith, but like, was she in? But did anyone know who she was when Scream 2 came out? Did they do the same thing? But now that I'm watching this, and this came out in 1995, 2 years before Scream 2, I'm thinking, maybe the horror community at least did. The horror community probably like had a bit of a fun kind of, oh, that's her from
for sure.
Demon Knight. And maybe there's other things too that I've not came across, but that was a fun element to it. So you got her, you've got the actress, she's got like, it's like initials like CCH
Pounder.
Yeah. Now I think her most prolific role is probably as a character on The Shield, the TV show. Not the Marvel thing. I know Tim's going to make a joke.
I was going to make a Psycho 4 joke, actually, but...
Well, I was going to say yes. For horror fans, she was also in Psycho 4. That is true. But her famous role is probably The Shield, on the FX show, which is a very good show. Not horror related, but anyway, but really good show.
Good. No, a show I surprisingly watched.
Oh, you
yes,
did?
It was good.
Oh,
yeah.
Really? Okay. I often think...
There was a time when I actually did watch like non-horror stuff and non-genre stuff where, yeah. So I surprisingly have seen that.
Oh, wonderful! I think the season 5 finale of that is one of the best season finales I've ever seen of anything. So that's the season with Forrest Whitaker in it. Just in case you're trying to place that.
Yeah, I mean I don't remember it like beat by beat, but yeah. Sounds familiar.
Trust me, that ending's pretty memorable. If I told, I'm not going to spoil it, but if I told you what it was, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, that."
Oh sure.
But so she's really great in that. So it was nice seeing her. So that's a lot of the bigger stars. But there's some other faces you recognise in here.
Well, I think Thomas Hayden Church is pretty big too.
Thomas Hayden Church, yeah, he's gonna have a bigger name, but I don't know if I like him in as much stuff as some of these other actors.
Oh sure. Yeah.
I mean, what we compare him to, especially in this era, Speed 2.
I mean, like I actually watched like a lot of Wings as a kid, so I knew him as the guy on Wings. But
I've never seen Wings, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to. I mean, I do have a actually I do think it's a pretty good sitcom, but like a 90s sitcom, but it's not like necessary viewing. You have Charles Fleischer, who is the mailman. He played probably best known for he did the voice of Roger Rabbit.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. The sheriff's John Shuck, who was a Klingon in a couple of Star Trek movies. So again, he's got one of those faces that you kind of recognize if you're a nerd. The one that caught me off guard is the prostitute Cordelia, which by the way, this is the only thing other than the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer that I've ever seen the name Cordelia ever appearing.
That's true, yeah.
And this came first, bizarrely, not before the movie, but it came before the show. The show obviously started in 1997. This is 95, so who knows, maybe old Joss was seeing this in the theater when he was like thinking of the characters for the show, and he heard the name and thought, oh, that's a nice name, I'm going to...
I'm sure like him and the director of Candyman 3 were sitting around tossing ideas for the show.
He worked on like an episode in like season 4 or something like that. Shut up. But anyway, so that the actress who plays this character Cordelia, Brenda Back's the actress's name, but I couldn't get it in my head when I first saw her. I was like, she looks familiar. I feel like I know her face. I've actually seen her face in a few things maybe that were a lot earlier or a lot later that's not what I'm thinking of, because she obviously looked different enough. The thing that I recognised her from, though, that came out the same year as this, funnily enough, she is in Under Siege 2, Dark Territory.
Okay.
She is the computer science lady who is like early on in the film, she's like one of the people the terrorists are after.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, I wasn't just being crazy. I mean, it turned out she was in some stuff like, oh, hold on, let me look. She was in LA Confidential. I don't remember her in that. I've only seen that the once, but you know, so she's popped up elsewhere. But that was what I was recognizing her from, was Under Siege 2 of all things.
I don't think I recognized her from those things, but but I think she does do a great job in here. Like, you know, even the people that aren't like, you know, ones like I recognize right away, I think, you know, still did like a, you know, pretty good job here.
Yeah, she was in an episode of Charmed, for example. So that's the sort of thing that I probably saw her on. And if you go further back, she might have been. I'm sure I saw something else when I was looking at. Oh, Death Spa. She was in Death Spa.
Oh wow!
Which we've not done that in the show, but I have seen it.
Have we not? Oh wow!
No, we haven't done Death Spa. I think we watched it together, bizarrely. I think we watched it together over...
Did we do a commentary for it or something?
No, I think we just watched it. I think we were just hanging out watching some movies one night. That was it. But we never reviewed it on the show, so we'll have to do that at some point, because Death Spa is definitely worthy of discussion.
Oh yeah, big fan of Death Spa. Actually, I haven't seen it in a while.
Maybe when we get the bonus movies back up and running, that'll be a key bonus feature. That'd be a good one. Yeah, so great cast. It's a mix of characters who are very pulpy, fit into some caricatures here or there, but it's a Bottle Siege movie a lot of this is speaking to me. I don't necessarily love every single thing that's in the movie. There's definitely some kind of like wacky Tales from the Crypt concepts that just kind of get thrown in there as well. But for the most part, it's fun. It's well paced. The main characters are fairly likable, and it kind of fits a vibe that, like, I'm glad this exists and it existed when it did exist, because I think, like, don't get me wrong, I would enjoy like a new version of this. If you made this story now, it'd probably still work for the most part. But there is kind of definitely a vibe that I always love discovering movies from these previous eras and like capturing what came, you know, from that time period with it in a bottle.
Sure.
No pun intended, given some of the plot of the movie. But so that fun, like you say, practical effects are mostly good. I think there's obviously some very intentional, like, sort of the demons kind of like Crypt Keeper-esque a lot of the time, and I think that's obviously an intentional choice. But for me, it's just the fun and the characters and the try to survive and the like, how do we survive? You know, you've got the asshole character who's kind of like causing more trouble than he's worth. You've got sympathetic characters, varying degrees. You've got characters who turn out to not be sympathetic once you realize what they were going to do. Like, there's a lot of mix of things. So
like, I think it's not like, I mean, like, I hope it's not insulting, but like, I don't think it's like a very deep movie. Like, what you're kind of saying there, when you're just saying like, yeah, it's just a fun movie, like, that's exactly how I feel. Like, it's like, it's a very good fun movie, but like, you know, it's not like there's something deeper to it. It's like, oh well, you know, it's this really brilliant movie because what it's saying here is like, no, it's like nothing like that. It's just like, it is like, it is kind of just like what you're saying. Like, it's a fun movie with fun characters.
I think what you're saying is a B movie, right? You know, it's a it's a really good B movie, and that's
like it knows what it is. Like, it plays into that. It's not trying to be like, you know, super serious or like, you know, some, I don't know, like over the top big budget blockbuster thing. It's just it's like a fun B movie, but you know, I think where it excels is kind of like you were saying before. Like, you know, it has just this great cast with very likable characters that you have fun watching, and and it's like, you know, it goes by quickly. It's not like overwrought or too stuffed or anything. So it's just like a fun time to watch. Yeah.
Plus, you know, I'm always a fan of finding more movies from the early to mid 90s that have Universal's music from that time at the start.
Okay.
Because it was like a short-lived period of like 6 years where they had this particular theme before they switched to the current one. And I like the current one's actually really good too, but like I do have a bit of nostalgia. I think it's because it was like, there's like a couple of movies from my childhood. I know, like Casper had the old one, like this one that's in this. I think Back to Future Part 3, I think, had it. So I don't know. That's obviously not. It's not to do with the movie. I'm just, you know, pointing out that I like it. So no, that's neat. I guess the one thing I will say I'm surprised about actually is that I really thought, even though they didn't do this on the show, I thought they might go back for Crypt Keeper segments once or twice in the middle, and they never did.
Oh, okay.
They saved it all the way till the end, which, while I do think it feels Tales from the Crypt in tone, like, you could easily cut off the Crypt Keeper segments at the start and the end, and it could just be a movie called Demon Knight, and it would work. It would still work as a movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that this just completely started off as its own separate movie, and then they just, you know, got the script, however, somehow.
It doesn't surprise me. I mean, you literally could do that. Like, there's absolutely no reason why a series of anthology movies like this have to start off as being made for that anthology. Like, you can go make the movie, and then if you want to like sort of buy it up and incorporate it into your anthology series, you just do it, and you just make some segments for the start and the end. Boom, you're done. Obviously,
done deal.
Obviously, they knew at some point, because there is some Tales from the Crypt references in the story itself. Not a huge ton, but there's a couple. So they clearly knew when they were making it was going to be Tales from the Crypt. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, I don't think. This isn't like what with the Hellraiser sequel where, this was clearly some random crappy like thriller horror movie that you've shoved Pinhead into for a second to justify it being called Hellraiser. This is not that. This can be other things. The whole point of Crypt Keeper is that he just presents different horror stories, really. So
right, yeah.
And sure, there is like a tone, there's like a vibe maybe they have to kind of have. They have to be kind of fun, maybe with a dark sense of humor, sure. But like, so it feel weird if like Martyrs was presented as Tales from the Crypt, Martyrs. Like that would be a bit off.
Yeah.
If I was in the Crypt Keeper cracking jokes about that movie.
I mean, it might not be that bad, but yeah, it might be weird.
I'm not saying that I don't want to. I'm just saying
Right.
it would definitely feel like, oh, there's been a shift here in the types of stories that the Crypt Keeper is presenting us.
I mean, I will say like the beginning and the ending Crypt Keeper segments really do make me laugh. Like they're very cheesy, but I don't know, just like I don't know. I always think the Crypt Keeper is funny, even though like he's obviously doing like very bad puns and stuff, but it works for the shtick.
Yeah. So with that said, I think we'll give the spoiler warning so we can actually talk about all the stuff that happens in the movie. So full spoilers from this point on. Obviously we'll start with the opening Crypt Keeper segment. Why wouldn't we? I do appreciate they still do the opening of the show. Like they just, I mean, it looks better because it's they do it like they've redone it in film and like the the bigger aspect ratio. But it is the opening. We're going into the house and down the stairs and all that.
Really, and I mean, again, by the end of the show, when we were doing it, it was starting to like get like exhausting. But like, I never grew tired of the opening. Like, it's just it's a great song and great intro, big creepy.
And
castle
they never
thing.
actually changed the like the format is still kind of there where we have our opening segment play out after the title. It's a bit more in depth than what was on the show because they've got obviously more money and they want to do something flashy for the movie, but the title of the movie Demon Knight itself doesn't come up until like in the show when the episode's title would come up and the credits play out like the credits in a Tales from the Crypt episode. So they didn't try to like make it like, oh, we have to be more cinematic and have the credits play out in this way. They just we're doing the exact. So the opening as it was starting as they're driving down the road and you've got just the text coming up and the font, it feels like the start of an episode, just bigger.
Now, did you think the movie was starting right away, like with the woman in the tub? Like, did they get you with that fake out?
Nah, because I was like, where's my Crypt Keeper segment? This has to be like that's what I thought they were doing, which is I guess I'm kind of right, but it was a bit more meta than that. Is I thought that what they were doing was they were doing this as the end of this previous story that he was telling, and then he would lead us into whatever the main movie story. Instead, it was the whole skit was he was directing a movie. And his opening skit, and it's this ridiculous thing where this supermodel babe has just murdered her husband, and she's still in her sexy lingerie. She's still all made up, and she's so turned on by the fact that she's just murdered her husband, and goes to have a bath. So we have this gratuitous shot right in front of her, giant wabos, and. Joe's funny about this opening segment is that it almost felt like it was kind of a critique of the show in a way, because I felt like this opening segment summed up like half the episodes of the show, which is someone does something bad to someone, probably kills them, and that person comes back to life to murder the perpetrator. That's like half the episodes of the show, and that's what happens here.
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of the show is like you're usually following like a bad person, and then the tales are usually like about them getting their just desserts kind of ending, which is what I was kind of saying before when I said the movie doesn't necessarily feel like an episode to me because it
doesn't follow that plot. Yeah, it doesn't follow that structure, but I would say that a lot of the tonal things and the spirit is there. Yeah.
Agree.
So yeah,
that is funny. Yeah, that is like this opening like 2 minutes or whatever does just feel like a sum up of it, like every other episode.
And I think it actually kind of points out why the last like 3 seasons were a chore to get through, is because at a certain point it's like, yeah, you can sum this up in like a minute. You don't have to, like, the 22 minutes you were taking to tell these stories at that point were not necessary, and it was tedious to get through. And there was actually a couple where it was just randomly the person who was killed comes back to life as like a zombie to kill the person. There was a few like that. So that the husband's coming to kill her in the bath, and then the Crypt Keeper yells cut and starts complaining about the acting. We get some puns. and he's a big hot shot producer director now. He's like, yeah, I've went to Hollywood. I'm going to show you what I've been working on, and that's what leads us into the movie. It's just a fun opening. It's it's got the sense of humor. Down to the ridiculous, like the hot babe with her boobs out saying she's so turned on that she killed her husband. Like right down to that joke. It's so Tales from the Crypt.
And I love he's yelling at the guy that's like playing the zombie or whatever, and what does the guy say? He's like, "Oh, where'd they dig this guy up?"
yeah. even that actor, I reckon. I didn't look him up, but
he looked familiar.
Yeah, I did recognize him.
I think one thing that maybe they could have done that would have been funny is if they had like Robert Zemeckis or something like hanging around the set, or like one of those like million like producers that they had on the show.
Yeah, because obviously they had some famous people who were behind the show, so that'd have been cool. But the director of this, Ernest R. Dickerson, is his name. I can't say I'm familiar. He's worked in other films, in other roles. He's done some. He was a cinematographer in Do the Right Thing, which is obviously a well-known movie. But as far as directing credits goes, he does a lot of TV now. Seemingly, he's still working today. Has been doing TV episodes for a long time. He's done a number of Bosch episodes. He's done some House of Cards. He's done some The Walking Dead, Dexter episodes. So yeah, he's been working on like cable TV and streaming TV for a while. Oh, he's even done episodes of The Wire. That's really highbrow stuff. So power to him. Seems to have been doing TV since the early 2000s. As far as movies goes, though, it doesn't look like he's done a whole lot that was memorable. I'm not recognizing any of these names at all.
Yeah,
and a few of them are TV movies. So hey ho.
Well, I mean, he knocked it out of the park with this one, so.
I mean, maybe that tells you he's a workman director. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me. I didn't even check, but it wouldn't surprise me if he did an episode or two of the show, maybe.
Oh, yeah, probably. I wouldn't be surprised.
That would make some sense.
Let's see. Now I'm curious. I'm gonna look him up too, but
I'll do some waiting music while Tim searches for answers.
I should probably mention too. I did see a couple of years ago. I got to see they were doing like a special showing of this at a theater near me, and they had Ernie Dickerson was there, and then a few like Sadler and Fleischer, and then I think maybe like a producer or someone else was on there. But yeah, that was a really good time. Unfortunately, I don't really remember any of like, they didn't really have any like crazy stories or anything about the series itself, or at least none that I can really remember. But
I'm glad to hear you have such good terms with the director. You call him Ernie. You got a nickname for him.
Oh, it looks like he did Bones, which I don't think is like a great movie, but I think there was like some interesting stuff there. But yeah, geez, he did so much stuff. Like it's so hard when you're looking at people and they're like TV director because they just have like 100 credits.
Yeah. But hey, it means he's a consistent worker. He's getting paid, so hard to be mad for him.
Oh yeah.
So, So to get into the main story of the movie, Dodo. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, you kind of mentioned who the villain was earlier, and I don't think it's that much of a spoiler. But the movie does do
true.
Like where you're not really sure which one's the good guy and which one's the bad guy. I think it's actually pretty clear if you're paying attention, even though it kind of tries to tease that William Sadler's a bad guy. I think the performance and the way he talks to people tells you that he's actually the good guy, and Billy Zane has been far too smelly, far too cocky and smarmy, that he's definitely the villain. So it's not. I don't think it's like well, first of all, it's a fairly early revelation. No pun intended. But yeah. So but they do that. So but yeah, the big car crash. They drive into each other, and William Sadler goes on the run, tries to steal a car, gets caught. Ends up running into Dick Miller, who's getting drunk randomly. That's kind of his character, and says, "Hey, is there anywhere I can spend the night?" And he takes him to this old church that has been retrofitted into some kind of bed and breakfast, and that's where we meet some of our other characters who are kind of hanging out there.
Yeah, it's just like out in the middle of nowhere too.
Yeah. It's like out in the desert, basically. They're in New Mexico, specifically.
Oh, did they say that? Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a sign. He walks past a sign saying New Mexico at one point. So unless it was a lie, unless it was a deception.
No, that definitely sounds like that would make sense because it feels very like deserty, desolate kind of area. Also, I think I think we see it at some point in the beginning. He has like these stars on his hand that are moving around.
Yes. It's like little tattoos, but they move around. Yeah. So obviously there's a tease, and it's called Demon Night, so I'm expecting demons and shit. So I'm presuming there's some supernatural elements that are going to sneak its way in at some point. As they were racing each other on the road, I wasn't thinking, oh, this is just two men having a race fight. Like, I figured there was probably more to who these two characters are.
I mean, a race fight sounds like something very different.
Okay, yeah, a race. It's called a race. Yes, I know. But forgive,
I know what you're saying. But
forgive me for adding some color to the commentary. Okay.
Okay.
So it's here we meet our interesting batch of characters. Nice variety. Thomas Hayden Church shows up a little bit later, but he's like the asshole character. We have the mailman who's kind of this timid, kind of nervous guy who to Cordelia the prostitute is kind of nice to and wants to give him a freebie to cheer him up because he's been fired from his job. He's a mailman. And
he's like obviously very much in love with her.
yeah, he's clearly smitten with her. It's all very awkward for him. They can all hear when Thomas Hayden Church shows up to have sex with her. Everyone can hear them like downstairs in the sort of the general area. But we get introduced to all of the characters, and he gets William Sadler gets a room, and it kind of sets things up. Now I have a question for you. What the hell was he eating? He put ketchup on what looked like melted ice cream. That's what it looked like to me.
I mean, assuming it's some kind of like, I don't know, maybe like meatloaf or something. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't too sure either. But I mean, they even joke about it because everyone is kind of astounded that he's actually eating it.
I'm like, the man's hungry. It's denying that, I suppose. But I'm like, is this maybe like a stew, but it's like not the right color? Like what? What is it? I'm confused. Sure. I was baffled by it all. But it gives you enough, like, because I was thinking, maybe because Billy Zane runs into the cops who are investigating the crime, and he's like, hey, that man stole something from me. I have to find him. Let's go track him down. And I thought, maybe the whole movie's going to be them like try to like get to him, and we're going to spend a lot of time at this B&B without anything going down. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised at the pacing because they do show up relatively early on, and we get this kind of standoff where Jada Pinkett Smith, who's like employed by the landlady to do a bunch of jobs, like she's kind of presented as kind of the sort of the smart badass of the group. She gets grabbed by William Sadler so that the cops will put their guns down. There's a bit of a standoff. They've got him arrested. And Billy Zane keeps saying that he's looking for something, some important item. But even the cops here go, wait, yeah, what are we even looking for? What you like? You not even said what you're trying to find yet. Like,
I do kind of like here that I feel like a lot of the time, like in horror movies, the cops are usually kind of, brushed away as being like very like dumb and dismissive. And I like here that they were actually like smart enough to be like, well, we're gonna take you both down to the station and get this figured out. Like, we're not just like, because it does seem like for a second there that they're just gonna blindly believe Billy Zane's character, but I do like that they're like, well, no, let's not just like totally believe him like right now.
No, I mean, obviously the deputy character is kind of a buffoon. That's very much him. Like when he goes to take his gun out of his holster, he's kind of fumbling it, and he's very much presented as the doofus of the two. Which is why when the sheriff gets killed first, because Billy Zane's like, I'm not going to, okay, I guess we're going to have to do this the hard way. He punches the sheriff through his face, and his fist comes out the back, and thus starts the chaos of the night. There's a whole kerfuffle. Basically, to get the vial, the cross, the key, if you want to call it that, with the blood in it, Obviously, I'm thinking this is Jesus' blood. That makes this probably what this is. It feels like it makes a lot of sense. But that can be used to make barriers at the doors and the windows. So eventually, William Sadler gets himself out of the handcuffs. He's able to get him outside, and thus we have they're inside the building. Billy Zane's outside. He wants to get in. Billy Zane raises some demons out of the ground. They look very Crypt Keeper-esque, and they can't go through the barriers. If they go through the barriers, they basically get exploded, as we see with one of them in the sort of the kitchen area, and that's good fun. So we get all this set up.
Yeah, no, it's like a great setup and a premise, and like we talk a lot, about different horror movies and how we like when there's like rules with them. So I kind of like that this quickly sets up like some rules. Like, all right, well, we got these demons. They need this key, but we can also use it to keep them out. But like, we only have a limited supply, and you have to use it on like barriers and stuff. So it's like a nice, fun, like little setup for everything.
And you can only kill the demons by destroying their eyes, which is an interesting effect, because when they shoot the eyes, like there's these like green laser beams almost that come firing out. It almost looked, because it was like an erratic beam rather than a straight beam. It was making me think, oh, you know what? If they ever do like Darkseid's Omega beam in a movie, it might look something like this. Not green probably, but something akin to this.
You know what it makes me think of? Like, it makes me think of being mad in a video game. Like, when you get like enemies and they have like a new way that like, oh, these characters can only die by this way, and you're just like, oh, that's so annoying. Like, why can't I just like shoot them or hack them like normal enemies? Or
but this is where the movie's kind of set up into its like groove, right? And all of this stuff's very exciting, and then we're set up in this new status quo. And we have this thing, though, where no one really knows who William Sadler is. It's very clear that he's the good guy in this scenario, but everyone is kind of, like, hesitant to trust him. What are the rules here? And because he says to them, like, we just have to last the night. We just have to spend the night here until the morning and just survive and just follow the rules and we'll be okay. And immediately, I mean, Thomas Hayden Church is the one who's the most vocal and, like, giving him shit. But no one at the start is ready to quite believe yet. They're all kind of in shock. They've all just seen demons, right? They've seen at least one person get bloodily, killed in a very violent fashion. They're all kind of freaking out. And from here we have kind of a sequence of like, okay, we have to take out all the doors. And then there's some key moments that take place. Like Jada Pinkett Smith at one point sits down next to William Sadler and says, I kind of knew you were going to hurt me. You seem like a good guy for whatever reason. And and she's like, hey, so, who are you? Like, what is going on? And he's like, I'm just an old man. And obviously it's going to reveal by the time the movie's over who he really is and what's going on, which we'll get into. I don't think this is a movie we're necessarily going to like, take it beat for beat. I think there's like some key ideas. The main kind of like logistics of it, which is the how can they get in puzzle and all that stuff. That basically boils down to anyone that comes in, he checks by putting the key, which is also kind of a cross, up to them to check. He checks the cat. He checks a kid later on eventually. Obviously the blood hurts the demons. It hurts Billy Zane as well. That's the important thing. But there is also at one point a tunnel they find in the basement, because there used to be mining tunnels around here, and they all want to go and leave, and he's like against it, and so they try that at one point and they end up getting attacked and they have to run back into the house. So they end up having themselves like caught upstairs, and there's a lot of fun stuff that happens a lot along the way. But the other key plot element of this movie is that Billy Zane, and it's very slow at first because he goes after the prostitute Cordelia first. She has like a couple of like and this is why the movie's kind of good at what it does, is that it gives her a little bit of a story before she's taken over and before she has to die. Right? We get the whole thing where yes, like the cop walks in, her and Thomas Hayden Church, and she's got the electrocution clamps on his nipples, and that's kind of funny. But then he's kind of a dick to her, and it's actually the mailman who runs out and tries to save her when she's getting attacked. And Thomas Hayden Church almost gets her killed by leading her outside, and it's like, oh, now she's like, no, you're like my real friend. You actually care about me. So it gives you this, and it also gives you a little bit of like sympathy for her because Thomas Hayden Church slaps her and is more of a dick to her. It's like, okay, right, so we're setting up, he's an asshole, we're going to have fun when he dies, we're going to enjoy that, and that's going to be great. And we're kind of rooting for her a little bit. It feels like, no, we kind of want her to survive. And I knew deep down she had mid-movie death written all over her. But it made me not want her to die a little bit. And that's good. Like that's the sign of, like, you're making me like the characters. Good B-movie stuff.
Yeah, like, I really can't, like, emphasize enough just how well this movie treats its characters. Like, again, like, they do kind of play into, like, some tropey stuff, but, like, again, the performances are so great, and, like, they never really burden you with, like, long backstories or expositions or anything, but you, like, completely know these characters, like, just from their the way they talk, their mannerisms, like, like, it feels like, I mean, we're not even, like, super far into the movie, but, like, even just, like, at this point right here, we still have such, like, a good grip on them, and like you were saying, like, that's why it does, make it a little more impactful when they, do die, or when they have these, like, fantasy sequences. Like, it's, I really can't praise the movie enough for just how well it does that, especially when you think of, like, other movies like this that just have such, like, flat wooden characters.
Yeah, it's economical with its time with the characters. You get enough out of them to really kind of get them. And I don't think, like, the archetypes that horror characters specifically fall into, they aren't necessarily all bad, as long as you're using them as a shorthand to sort of fill out the as long as the roles are played well and they're likable enough, and you have actors who sort of give it a bit of charm. It's not a big deal. In fact, if anything, they're a comfort to have the archetypes a little bit, rather than have a bunch of... Because we complain so much about modern horror movies that try to avoid the archetypes, but all they do instead is have 7 identical characters who have no personality traits, that are just blank slates. And that's, more of a problem, I think, than having the archetypes. And this movie does actually do a couple of interesting things later on that kind of break some molds, which we'll get to. But yeah, so what I was getting at, though, with she's the first victim of Billy Zane. Sort of, like, he can't come in the house, but he can kind of get into their heads and kind of try and seduce them into turning over to the dark side. And he kind of does it with her. It works. She becomes a demon. He kind of plays on her insecurities and says, hey, he treats you this way, and he calls you a whore, and that's an awful word, and wouldn't you like to get back at him? He kind of gets in her head, and it turns her into a demon.
And I think most of the stuff he does in this movie is, like, over the top and goofy, but this is the one scene where it does actually come off, like, maybe, like, a little creepy to me, the way he's just kind of, like, standing outside, and, like, he's not even, like, moving his lips, but, like, you can hear his voice, like, talking in her head. Like, there's, I don't know, kind of like a weird eeriness to it, I think.
Yeah, I think Billy Zane's, like, attempts to win them over are all entertaining in different ways. I think this one's quite dark and sinister because it's actually preying upon her weaknesses and her insecurities, and kind of belittling her, and, like, hey, you're just this, so I'm going to exploit that. I think the one with Jada Pinkett Smith, and obviously it's important for her that she succeeds and sort of rejects the deal as it's presented, but he gives her this whole thing where it's like, oh, you want to travel the world, you don't want to just be stuck in this crappy job and all this, you want to have a life, and shows her, like, herself, like, taking selfies. And this is before the word selfie existed, but taking selfies in Paris and other cities around the world, and tries to kind of, like, smoothly, like, talk to her, because he appears, in her mind in the dream or fantasy behind her, and kind of dances a little bit and kind of tries to woo her, and she spits in his face, she rejects it, but he's so charismatic in this that there's kind of a fun to it, and it almost becomes this, like, how's he going to appear to the others? And he becomes this kind of sly bartender with a beret and sunglasses on when he's trying to seduce Dick Miller, who's the drunk, into taking a drink, but not just any drink, taking his drink, which is him accepting his offer. And of course the other part of this, which I assume you want to mention, is the copious amount of boobage in this scene. So many breasts in the scene. Yeah, basically he walks into, like, a tiki bar and all the women are topless, and all of a sudden, go on, have a drink. What's funny is when I was looking at the IMDb list, at the very bottom I noticed the name Chasey Lane, and I'm like, wait, I recognize that name because the Bloodhound Gang have a song called The Ballad of Chasey Lane. Okay. She's a porn star, Tim. Yes, I can assume. Yes, which is why they wrote a song about her. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. I bet they're probably all porn stars. Well, a lot of them.
Good on them.
I mean, look, there was a very high percentage of enhanced breasts amongst these boobs. Right?
Yes.
So
good practical effects.
Practical effects. That was the practical effects budget. They had to get them all boob jobs. Rick Baker himself was in there putting in the implants. But yes, that does not shock me. At least some of those actresses were porn stars. But yes, but they're all like, go and have a drink, and then as he takes a drink and he accepts it from it became fun, like watching him like become these different like personas, trying to win them over in different ways. But as he's taking a drink, they're all like, yes, go on, drink, have another one, yes. It's kind of like having like 12 sexy devils over your shoulder trying to tell you to do something.
Yeah.
But yes, and sure enough, that's what makes him become a demon later on in the movie, which, you know, they have good fight. That's the one where it's actually the kid who kills him, the kid who ends up joining them from the tunnels. He puts his head, actually no, it's the kid, or was it Jada Pinkett Smith? Yeah, but it's the Antlers. This is the Antlers' death.
Yeah, so basically, I forget how it happens, but like his head comes off, and then the kid picks it up and like, basically just like kind of brings it over and shoves it into the antlers.
Yeah,
it is kind of weird. Like I do want to, like I think mostly the effects in here are good, but I don't know, something about his head doesn't really look like Dick Miller.
No, I agree. I noticed that as well. It wasn't even just the cut off head. Actually, it was before
when he's like the demon.
Yeah, beforehand he's turned into the demon. I thought that doesn't look like Dick Miller, and then there's a moment where he turns back into Dick Miller to say hello to the kid, and then when he turned back into the demon again, I thought it's actually noticeable. I don't know if it was a stuntman or if the makeup was just altering his face so much that it just
it's weird.
It didn't look like him. We should mention actually when they were fighting the prostitute when she turned into a demon, she rips off Pounder's arm in a brutal scene. It rips it off completely, and so there's a lot of like going for the eyes. You know, the head and the antlers was to destroy the eyes because they were still alive. Here it's the shotgun to the eyes, and then the eyes themselves are on their own, and they're kind of dangling about, and they have to shoot them as well. So
and I do like when we get later with CCH Pounders like little scene with Billy Zane where he's offering her arm again, and she's basically just like, screw you.
Yeah, he offers it on a platter as if it's like a fish or something. Like, here.
And he just like raises her like the nub that she has left, and he's like, what's that? And she's like, that's me giving you the finger. Like, very good one-liner. That
was a funny line. Yeah, that was funny. She has a big ending, of course. She has the sacrificial. So weird plot detail here, but in the attic where she thought she'd forgotten she found, this is where the kid starts reading the Tales from the Crypt comic book, which kind of possesses him. But they find like a trunk that the mailman was keeping up there that had all of the mail that he said he didn't know where it all went, but it turned out he was actually still in the mail and reading them. But they also found a bunch of guns and a bunch of grenades and a letter that basically said that he was going to like kill everyone at the mailroom for Cordelia. Now, at this point in the movie, he's already dead because Cordelia herself killed him. You know, she kissed him and then messed him up. And you felt some sympathy for him. And all I could think during this reveal that he was going to, like, you know, go postal is the fact that we have the phrase "go postal" and it was like a joke on Seinfeld.
I mean, yeah, it's funny. I mean, I don't know, like, if a lot of people like remember this, especially maybe people like, you know, born in the 2000s or whatever. But like the 90s, there was like a lot of like, postmen going crazy like jokes. I feel like
was there an actual incident that spurned it on?
I mean, I feel like there has to have been like at least one or two incidents. I can't even say incidents. Where, so like, I mean, that's why it must be a thing. But like, I wonder, was it something that like, you know, it happened like 5 different times like around the country, or is it like, oh, it happened once and then we blew it out of proportion or something? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's so weird, but yeah. But anyway, so I thought of Newman basically in this scene. But yeah, so Pounder gets to, like, you know, she has like she's rigged up all the grenades on the belt to like come off at the same time, and she sacrifices herself. For some reason, Bob, the deputy, also decides to stay back with her and like go out in a blaze of glory together. Which leads us to our big climax up top in the attic, which we have to go back and talk about the series of flashbacks. So throughout the movie, William Sadler's having and it's like it goes back to the crucifixion, right? Where someone's under Christ as he's on the cross and his blood's dripping. We see like the blood get into the vial, right, on this key, and then we see a flashback later on, which is how William Sadler's character became involved in this. It's basically, this is passed down from Chosen One to Chosen One, and he was a soldier in World War One in the trenches, and this guy who was the previous Chosen One. So we have a Cordelia in this and a Chosen One. I don't think that's an accident, right? But so this guy like pours his blood into the vial. So every Chosen One at the end of their tenure pours their blood into the vial to sort of refill it, and hands it to the new Chosen One, and that's just how William Sadler got his start with this, and it all builds up as he explained. Do you want me to explain this first, there?
Oh sure, no, yeah, you can go. Sorry.
All right, so he explains to the group, like an hour out of the movie, when they're demanding to know what's going on, like fully, just open, out with it. He explains where the vial came from, and that it's a key, one of 7, and the demons. Not the demons that are being raised from the ground, but Billy Zane's, he's like a proper demon. That when creation happened, before that there was darkness, and in the darkness there was demons, and like they got 6 of the keys. If they get the 7th key, the darkness will return. You know, all creation is gone. Blah blah blah. So basically, every time the 7 stars align and there's 7 people, which it became 7 when the other characters came in. Because he says that, I thought we were safe because there was only 5 of us, or only 5 of you, not including him. But then the other characters came in with the cops, and lo and behold, we have the recipe: 7 stars, 7 people. It's time for this fight to happen. And of course, as soon as I saw the flashback of him in World War One, like having it passed to him, I thought, well, he's obviously going to pass this to someone else at the end of the movie. And then immediately I thought, oh, Jada Pinkett Smith is the one who's been shown to have a bit of a chemistry with them. You know, they've had a couple of scenes together, a bit of camaraderie building there. But also because just on a meta level, like outside the movie, I've seen this movie brought up a lot when talked about important black like horror movies, you know, black character horror movies. And up until this point, I mean, she's a nice enough character, but like, it was like, it's an ensemble. It didn't necessarily feel like it was specifically geared towards her character. And I thought, oh, well, that's maybe how it's going to feel more important then by the end, is that she's going to be seen as the new Chosen One, and it's going to be probably a big deal for mid-90s especially, the idea that this character passes down this I mean, it's not an honor necessarily, it's kind of like a burden in a lot of ways, but this important task is passed down to her. And sure enough, that's what happens. You know, he saves her towards the end of the movie. He's dying, so he pours his blood into the thing and sort of gives her the task of being the next one. And she's left on her own to fight Billy Zane one-on-one, which leads to, a big climax, and we'll get to that in a minute. But what did you make of all the backstory stuff and all the story and the passing down and blah, blah, blah?
So I like it a lot. I think, it's a really good... premise, and I like that, it gives you enough like setup and explanation, like, for everything without, feeling too like forced or, exposition-y or whatever. The only thing that like, I don't know, like almost like makes me a little mad is like, I wonder if, because I feel that is like a pretty rich mythology, and I don't know, I kind of want to see more, and I wonder if this wasn't a Tales from the Crypt movie, if like, I don't know, we could have potentially became a franchise. Like, I would have been down to see more Demon Knight stuff. I mean, I don't know if it was like super popular, maybe we wouldn't have seen more, but like, I don't know, like I could definitely see like sequels being fun. And then like, you could even like do like, it's such like a good premise that you really can, like kind of jump like around and do stuff like at any time if you wanted to do prequels or
you could do a sequel with Jada Pinkett Smith. You could do prequels set in different like time, like go back to like Civil War era. Who is it then? For example, there's possibilities. I honestly, I like the concept well enough, but I actually think it would. The one time the movie almost lost me a little bit is the first time it cut to like Jesus on the cross, and I went, "Oh, what are we doing here?" Like I was ready to like push the panic button, and it's actually not that bad, and everything that came from it later was solid. But I honestly feel like you didn't need to see that. Like I think it would have it would have worked better if we just heard him tell us. Like I think we need to see the World War One flashback because that's his start. So we should see that because he's seen that himself. And I know that the movie's saying that when he like took the mantle, it's like he got like a rush of flashback, so he did kind of see all this stuff, like he saw the previous versions in his head. But I think like leaving that to our imagination and just saying, because the idea that anything from that time period, of the time of Jesus, is that it's not something that anyone living has any actual record of in terms of like visual media, so it's kind of a weird thing to actually show us because it always just feels a bit hokey. So I think just hearing him tell us that and only seeing the World War One thing, because that's his own experience, so he's seen it, so he can sort of pass that on more vividly, and also because we have actual footage and like photos of that, so it doesn't feel hokey because it's like, no, this is what it actually looked like. We've seen it. It feels grounded enough that it doesn't feel super cheesy. Whereas, here's Jesus on the cross. It's like, oh my god, I'm getting flashbacks of what was that movie? What did we do where one of them turned out to be Jesus? Oh, Dracula 2000.
Oh yeah. he was Judas or something.
I was Judas, yeah. That was it. But anyway, like, that's what it was making me like have fears of for a moment when I saw Jesus on the cross. But that's my one critique of it, really.
Yeah, I feel like you're doing a good job too. If like you can kind of like instantly, like your imagination starts going like wild, because like whenever they get to this part, like I do start thinking of like, oh man, like I wonder what that story was like in was it World War One? They said
World War One,
Or, like just like imagine like, oh, like this concept, but like on like a battlefield or in the trenches or something. Like, oh, that could be really interesting. Like I like that it kind of starts getting like your juices flowing, like,
especially since by the sounds of it, it's like it always happens when this kind of night with 7 people and this fight with the demon happens. So like, okay, like what was there 7 soldiers left after a battle like in this trench, and like it was them that the demon came after. Like, it actually sounds like a pretty fun movie, to be honest.
Right? Yeah. No, like I mean, this is definitely like a concept I would I mean, again, like you never know if it would have been done right. Like maybe they could make more stuff and it wouldn't have been as entertaining. But I mean, just thinking about like, oh yeah, this is like a story I'd love another movie or even like a limited TV series or comic book. Or, like it's just a fun idea you could do more with. But
there's definitely potential with the concept. But at the same time, though, I think it does kind of work that it is just a one-off where it leaves you with all these ideas in your head and all these possibilities. Terminator fans dreamed of a future Terminator movie for a long time, and then they got it, and oh boy. So sometimes it's better to leave it in the imagination. Yeah, definitely. Like
I think there's something to be said of like, just thinking about it over in your head is more enjoyable than what you end up getting at some points.
But of course, Thomas Hayden Church tries to make a deal with Billy Zane, and I love how smooth Billy Zane is as he's talking to him. He's like, because Thomas Hayden Church is like, I don't mind if you kill the rest, but just let me live and let me go. And he's like, yeah, sure. And he's like, but make sure you kill William Sadler's character because he's a bit of a dick. He's like, oh, isn't he just like the way he kind of responds to him is just so sly and so. I love
that. I love when the sponge comes out of his mouth. He's like, oh yeah, one more thing. Like the sponge just comes out and kind of like wiggles his eyebrows.
Yeah. So to wipe the barrier that's been created at the stairs, so he can get upstairs and go after the others.
But it is so good because like they are both just like such like slimy characters, but they have like a great like chemistry together because of that. Where they're just like, he's like, yeah, man, I don't really care so much about this like end of the world business. Like, you know what, you're one of the good ones. Like, yeah, it's very funny.
Yeah, and of course he immediately turns on him, and like Thomas Hayden Church gets mauled by the demons. So
I feel like we probably could have maybe gotten a little better of a death. Like, I mean, like, because he is like such an asshole character that you are definitely waiting for him to like get what's coming to him. And I mean, sure, yeah, he gets like ripped apart by demons, but it's very quick and like you don't really see much. Like maybe it might have been nice to have something like a little flashier for him, but
Sure, yeah. But yeah, the big show off or showdown rather is between Jada Pinkett Smith's character and Billy Zane, and it's this thing where he actually kind of wins it first by like forcing her into a bathtub and breaking her wrist and pouring all of the blood that's in the key down into the bathtub. So it's basically all gone. And it's quite obvious that she's holding some in her mouth, like for the rest of this next bit, because she's like not talking, and he's like, "Why aren't you speaking?" And I'm like, "Because she's got some of that blood in her mouth." I thought she was going to kiss him and put it in his mouth, which would have been a fun thing. Instead, she just ends up spitting on him, which is a nice callback because she spat in his face earlier. So I get why they made that choice. But he actually says, "Hey, I'm kind of into you. Actually, what if you come back to my side?" And a demon knight's never crossed paths. So that's when we actually get to hear the title. A demon knight's never came over to the other side, but I'm sure my parents would just adore you. And he's like sort of dancing around there. It becomes kind of this dark sort of ballroom kind of thing. Really fun stuff. Again, really charismatic. And she wins. She wins by spitting the blood in his face.
Did this remind you of any other movies that we might have done before?
Movies that we've done before?
Yeah.
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay, because I think I kind of mentioned it when we did, but it's been a few years now. So, I mean, this is kind of an older movie, so, I don't think, it's, we talked about it before, so I don't think it's a big deal. But I mean, if anyone is afraid it's a movie they haven't seen, they don't want to be spoiled, maybe skip ahead, like a minute or two, or a few minutes of whatever you want to do. But honestly, I could not help but think about this when we watched The Nun. Like, I don't, if you remember, like, I know you weren't a big fan of that movie, like I wasn't crazy about it either, but you remember, like, at the end, like, it's been a while since I've seen it now, but they also had something about like Jesus's blood, and then it ended with like the character spitting it in the demon's face. Like, I don't know, it just felt like such a ripoff to me.
Well, I'm happy to say I only ever saw that movie once, Tim, so the details are very hazy, but no, there was no way, shape, or form I was ever going to remember that.
I'm glad we can talk about it now, but I mean, I mean, obviously you're not going to watch the movie again, but like,
if anyone skipped ahead because they were worried about spoilers and it turned out to be The Nun, ha.
I just think it's like, I don't know, to me it just seems like such a coincidence, because it's like, well, it's not like that's a common trope where like you get a lot of people spitting Jesus's blood into demons' faces. Like, that's a very specific thing. So I just thought it was really weird when they did in that movie.
Although, speaking of movies we kind of spoiled, earlier we kind of spoiled about the big twist of Dracula 2000. Don't worry, it's a terrible movie. It's okay. And don't worry, and also do not be concerned. Just because we did a watch along once on a stream with that does not mean that series is never going to be reviewed. It'll happen. I just need to forget more of the movie before we go back and review that, because that was a really bad one to watch.
Yeah.
But my reaction to that twist was heated, shall we say. So anyway, she wins the fight. She actually goes back up to William Sadler's body, because I was thinking, like, can't she just get more blood from him, because he's still sitting there. So she gets more blood from him, he's dead corpse, and as opposed to a living corpse, which, to be fair, this movie actually does have some living corpses, so it's a fair distinction in this case. So she gets some more blood, and she puts some flowers at his grave, and gets a bus out of town, but notably does a little bit of the blood at the door of the bus so that the no demons get on board. And it turns out there's a new demon with a very similar case for the key and a similar kind of hat and trench coat, now hunting her. Presumably something that might now continue for decades and decades, given how long William Sadler's time was.
I love, like, he kind of just looked at the bus, and you can tell he knows the barrier's there, and he's just like, I'll get the next one. And it's like, oof, what a good ending.
Yeah, it's a fun ending. Not a lot of Tales from the Crypt stories necessarily had a good character who got to win, and so it's nice that this kind of has that. And of course, it transitions. It goes back to the grave of William Sadler, and the hand comes up, takes the rose down, which leads to the Crypt Keeper, who. And the joke here at the end is it's premiere night, so he goes to the movie premiere for Demon Night. Gets out the limo, and that's something I never mentioned at the start, but because it's a movie and they've got a bigger budget, we get to see him walk They've got like, and the effect's not that great, especially
No.
in the opening when he's walking. You can clearly see that it's like they've stuck his head on, like you know, like it's been done separately. So it looks a bit mismatched.
Is it really that hard just to have like a big puppet? For him?
Apparently, it looked better at the end. I thought him walking in the red carpet at the end looked better.
Yeah.
It looked better. But so he's walking down the red carpet. And then the producers are there with a guillotine, and he's like, "Oh, they took my request for the final cut a bit literally, I see."
Very funny.
That was a funny joke. So they decapitate him. His head's in the basket, and he says, "And that's that's entertaining," or something, something like that. And he laughs, and there we go. That's the movie. So it's fun segments. I think because they could make a lot of jokes about it being a movie, they had a lot to work with, even though it came like this late or after the show. This is not after the show, right? The show wasn't done by 95. I think it had a couple of seasons still.
Must have been, yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder is this like when I wonder if this was towards the end when maybe they're doing all those like weird British episodes, like if maybe they were focusing on the movie and then just had this like UK team working on it or something. I don't know.
If I go to the episode guide for the show, it ended in season 7 was 96, so that was after. Season 6 started October 94 and ended January 95. So yeah, this is between. This is between season 6 and 7. This movie.
Okay, so then I mean, and those were definitely like the last like 2 or 3 seasons were definitely the hardest to watch. So I wonder if it was because
for sure
more people were focused on the movie, if the normal people that work on it or something was busy with that.
Yeah, I don't remember this. Did we do an episode called Demon Night at the end of season 6, which tied into the movie? Was that a thing?
I mean, I'm not gonna remember the titles of it. Does it give a description about the plot?
There's an episode called Demon Night, and Billy Zane and William Sadler are in it. I don't remember this at all.
Does it have a synopsis about what it's about?
Yeah, high-level demons collect low-level demons as warriors in an attempt to obtain a key containing the blood of Christ. The key is guarded by the immortal warriors called Demon Knights. Hold on, let me go check if we reviewed this. I
mean, that just sounds like the movie. I don't think...
Yeah, but
that doesn't sound like an episode.
But it doesn't have the full cast though.
It's very strange.
It does say an hour 32 minutes, so I guess they're also counting this technically
as an episode,
as the final episode of season 6, which it isn't. It definitely is not.
Yeah, I don't like that.
That is weird. Yeah. Okay, that's odd. That is very weird. Yeah, because the actual last episode of that season was the one where they tried to like bring Humphrey Bogart back from the dead by having like his voice.
That was the worst.
Yes,
hated that.
yeah, that's weird. Yeah, that's so weird. They tried to count that as an episode. Yeah, so I guess this was like their big last hurrah, and then they got their weird cheap seasons where they shot it all in the UK afterwards. So weird stuff. Yeah, the last. Yeah, looking at season 6, there was one decent episode early on, but I remember season 5, 6, and 7 all been a real chore to get through.
Yeah.
1 to 4, but it wasn't like all good. There was definitely bad stuff mixed in, but it was, it was as much good as there was bad, so it was an even kind of ratio. But seasons 5, 6, and 7 were mostly terrible, with one or two gems sprinkled, but.
Yeah, those were like rough. Like the early seasons, like you did get occasional bad episodes here and there, but I was still generally usually looking forward to it. By those last couple of ones, it was just like come on, let's hurry up and get this done with, so we never have to think about it again. Yeah,
and 5 was definitely a bad season as well, because I remember thinking, because episode 2 of season 6 was actually surprisingly good, and I remember us saying, being shocked that we got a good episode, because I think all of 5 was pretty much bad. I don't want to say there was not any good episodes, but it was definitely a trend by the time we got to 6. So
sure.
But yeah, go back and check out our reviews of all those episodes should you wish. So, but hey, yeah, no, fun movie. And I guess we're at the point where we're going to rate it. So Tim, what are you going to rate Demon Knight?
I mean, again, this is just when I originally had nostalgia for it, but then just over the last couple of years, I've watched it more and more, and it's definitely gotten to the point where this is now like a perennial like October viewing. Just because, yeah, I think it's so fun and such a blast, um, and since it is not like a, like obviously like a lot of people know about it, it's not like a hidden gem that no one's ever heard of, but it's still not one that like everyone has seen, so it's always fun to watch it with someone for the first time, and see him get excited over it. And yeah, it's just such a blast. Again, I mean, all the characters are so great. I think that's what makes it like just endlessly rewatchable, for the performances, just how well it does just like establishing those characters and then giving them some really great moments to shine, and then all the performances are great. And then yeah, even though like towards the end of the show we weren't digging it, I still love the Crypt Keeper, and I love the concept, and I love like those old EC horror comic books. I've been reading some of the archive collections that they've been put out, which is kind of funny because like some issues are just like exactly like episodes of the show.
Oh, really?
Like they really did just like take some like issues and just be like, all right, yeah, here's the script basically. But no, yeah, it's so much fun, and yeah, I just love that concept. I'm so glad that they did a movie, and then it's funny when it needs to be. The monsters are cool. It kind of reminds me of, I mean, one of my, I talked about it before, but Evil Dead, especially Evil Dead 2, that's like one of my favorite movies, and this kind of feels like almost like a 90s version of Evil Dead, like in some ways, because it just so cleverly mixes like the humor with the horror, and gives it like plenty of really cool fun set pieces for it, and again just nice interesting premise and like some fun rules, and who doesn't love like a nice like siege movie. Whenever like I kind of sit down and think about like there's like a lot of movies I like that I was like, oh yeah, that is kind of like a siege movie. I don't know, just something about like characters kind of trapped in this one location having to come together is just I don't know, just a really nice like setting for a movie. So yeah, I'm actually gonna give this a really good score. I am actually gonna go really high. I think I'm gonna give it a 9. I think maybe like earlier, like maybe the last couple of years, I probably would have said like, oh yeah, this is good. This is like a solid 7-8 movie. But again, I just keep finding more and more to like and come back to and think about with this movie, that the more I watch it each year. So yeah, I'm gonna go pretty high, and again, it's really climbing my list. I don't think it's like my top 10 horror movies, or maybe it is just skirting on the outside of it, but I think it's easily in the top 20 for me.
Whoa, well, I'm not going that high. I'll say that. But no, I was very entertained. It hit the right tone early on. It kind of gave me a fun premise, fun batch of characters. I liked that there was rules, and that those rules played into the geography, so you always kind of understood that, okay, there's boundaries, and the boundaries matter, and then the boundaries change, and you always kind of understood when those boundaries did change. So I appreciate that. I appreciate some of the practical effects. Mostly it's the characters that I think really make it all work, and the solid pacing. But even just something as simple as like, the arm. Well, I mean, it's an arm rip-off scene, but it actually it starts more like the arm gets snapped, and it's like, oh, that's nasty. But then it keeps going, and then eventually, it gets ripped off. And like, oh, damn, that just kept going and escalating, and it was really fun because of that. Yeah. So I'm not going as high as a 9. I think that's a bit crazy, but I think right now I'm happy to throw it at a solid 7.5. I think that's where I had a lot of fun with it. Maybe it'll grow more on me as well as time goes on. But it's a good movie. I would recommend it, and
nice.
Yeah, it was a good time. So at least I got to see one new good horror movie this October.
Oh, you are a big fan of An American Werewolf in Paris?
Do you recall our ratings for that one, Timmy? Because it was definitely a lot lower than a 7.5.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like I mean, I don't know who picked these movies out, but it feels like we have done a lot of stinkers this month.
Yeah, I wonder who that was. It's almost like I let someone run riot because I was happy they were back, and they put me in nothing but shite. And would you believe that this one that we actually liked was not picked by that same person? This was one of mine.
Yeah. Right, I'll let you do like a 3-hour French movie next episode if you want.
Don't tempt me. But anyway, that is that is Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight. Tim's going to post for the thumbnail, so make sure your headroom is a little clear. And here we go. 3, 2, 1, pause. Is that a T for Tim?
For Tales from the Crypt.
Ah. Very good. Very good. I'll be honest, when I put that in the thumbnail, it's probably going to look like you're trying to do a cross with your fingers but are too dumb to actually pull it off. That's what it's probably going to look like.
Well, if that'll get people to click.
Maybe a sympathetic click.
I gotta see what this YSK can't make across.
But cool. Yeah, I'll take this time to thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you very much to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Board Now, Al Treisman, Christopher Moy, David Brown, and Stanley. They are Patreon producers for the month. You want to say something, Tim? Well, you've got something in your face you want to say.
I was gonna make a joke about like 7 patrons, but there's one more than 7.
Well, yeah, yes, yes, there was eight producers there. Yes, that's correct. You can, of course, support us for as little as $1 per month on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and get some bonuses for your trouble. The Screams After Midnight regular bonuses aren't quite back yet, but it shouldn't be too long before they're back. But $5 and up patrons did get a vote at the start of the month. Obviously, that's over now. It only lasted a week. But you'll see what the winner of that was soon. Very soon, in fact. But that is Patreon. You can keep all the content coming with financial support over there. But you can support everything for free by simply liking, subscribing, dinging the bell for notifications, and commenting down below on YouTube. If you listen to the audio podcast version, make sure you share it with your friends. @Screams Midnight is the Twitter. You can also give us a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to the show. So all those things do help it a lot. So please do, and help the podcast grow and thrive and success. And let Tim give his child more horror props to pretend that they're about to unleash evil upon the world.
Oh man, if I had win a Demon Knight key, I could give him. That'd be great.
I hope like many people would get that joke though. I feel people recognize the Hellraiser, lament configuration. People recognize the Book of the Dead. I don't know if they're going to recognize the key from Demon Knight.
I'm running out. I need to find more.
Yeah,
so it's fun to do.
Tim's basement is just going to end up being like a cabin in the woods with all the various horror artifacts that could raise something terrible. But all right, there you go. That is basically the show. That is I've plugged Patreon. I've plugged the Twitter. I plugged all the YouTube buttons. Yep, we're good. That is the show. So thank you for joining us. This has been Screams After Midnight. So keep watching scary movies, and don't assemble 7 people on the night where 7 stars are aligned, because you might raise hell.
Mm-hmm. Well done.
Goodbye, guys. We'll see you next time.